Hey everybody, welcome back to our Meaningful Monday live stream. I was gonna say podcast, but it's not a podcast. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Joe Harrell, and thanks for joining today. Today we're talking about fear versus desire / love / hope, whatever you want to call it, but why operating out of fear doesn't really get you what you want, and how that's holding you back in a lot of ways. A lot of folks tend to ask about why they're holding themselves back, self-sabotage, those kind of things, especially around, like finding your passions, like how do you find your passions? Well, I think one reason that it's difficult to find your passions is because if you're stuck in the world of fear, if you're reacting to everything all the time, if you're not taking the time to actually just take a step back and kind of take stock of what you have in your life and what you want to do, you're not able to actually find your passions because you're not pursuing your passions. Especially younger folks tend to wonder how do they find their passions, how do they find the things that light them up. Whether that's career, whether it's a hobby, whatever that is. But you can't do that if you're going to be reactive all the time. If you're always constantly reacting to the world, allowing the world to affect you, then you can't be proactive about finding stuff that you want. And then ultimately, if you're just reactive your whole life, then you end up having a midlife crisis, and that's not fun at all. So that's living out of fear. That's a scarcity mentality. Like, I have to do this because of X. I have to do this. I have to do this. An obligation, or it's feeling like you're pressured to do something. You're not allowing yourself the freedom to make a choice. And there's always a choice, right? It may not be a comfortable choice to make, but it's going to be a choice. Any choice has impacts. Any choice has consequences. Any choice has results. And we may not even give ourselves permission to make that choice. So then how can you possibly find what your passion is if you're just reacting to the world and reacting to what's out there? Now, there are two things that motivate us. It's either we go towards what we want or we run away from what we're afraid of. And a lot of folks tend to spend their whole lives running away from running away from what they're afraid of, right? And they live in fear as a result, whether that's scarcity, fear of failure, fear of not having enough money, fear of not being enough, fear of not being worthy, and then fear of what others think of them, what others are going to say about what their choices are. And then there's others of us who are just know what they want and want to go after it, right? They set a goal. We set a goal for ourselves. We say we want something. We want our lives to look a certain way. And then we go after that. We're going to say, well, let's make this happen. How do we make that a reality? And then we go forward towards that thing. The difference is that when you're going towards what you want, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. When you're running away from something, you can go even darker into the tunnel, right? And it's tough to actually see where you're going when you're looking back, running away from what you're afraid of. And that's ultimately what a lot of people end up doing. So for those folks who are joining us, thanks for joining us tonight. Please, if you have comments or questions or things you want to talk about, the question I would ask is, how has fear or hope or desire shaped your life, right? How has having a goal shaped your life, or how has living in fear shaped your life? What are some things you might be afraid of that might be holding you back? And what are some things that you are setting for yourself? What are some goals you're setting for yourself? And how are you actually living into those and making those your reality? So I had a client of mine yesterday reach out and ask me, talk to me about a goal to set for themselves and how it was different from what they'd experienced before in the past. Not yesterday, Friday. Sorry, the days blend together these days. But they're saying that things felt differently now that we were setting goals and like moving towards something, whereas their whole lives they felt like they were kind of just avoiding pain, right? Everything was just avoiding. It's just doing just enough to not feel pain, not physical pain, but to not experience the pain of rejection, the pain of not succeeding, or the pain of not being enough. And that since she and I have been working together, it's something where she was able to actually set goals and start looking forward to something. She has something to look forward to, and she was hopeful about that. And it was different. And that got me thinking about this topic today, why I wanted to talk about it. Because ultimately, a lot of us tend to do that, right? I mean, like if you think about kids or folks in college, folks in high school, when you're trying to set the course of your entire life at that age, you haven't lived enough of a life to, or been allowed to live that much of a life to really know what you enjoy about the world, what your passions actually are. You haven't experienced enough stuff, right? And so when I get the question from younger folks, particularly, how do I know what my passions are? And sometimes even older folks who have never taken the time to actually define those passions. how do I find my passions? Well, you got to try a lot of things to start, right? And maybe you'll stumble upon those things, but take a step back even further from that and ask yourself, how do you interact with the world? If your interaction with the world is a reactive one, then you're not going to be able to really even recognize your passions when you come across them, because you're going to be so focused on avoiding pain, avoiding frustration. Your mindset is focused on avoidance, not on pursuit, right? You feel like you're being pursued rather than pursuing. So you need to make that shift first before you're able to actually recognize those passions and recognize the things that light you up, because you're not even in the mindset to do that. And then once you make that shift, then you have to make the other shift of saying, how do I recognize when my energy is actually being enabled versus being sucked? Because energy, things that drain us, things that hold us back, are going to be energy sucks to us, right? They're going to be things that take away our energy and don't allow us to live our best life. And the leadership circle profile, for those of you who talk to me, I've spoken about this before. It's an assessment. It's a tool that we use in the coaching world, but it's a really powerful assessment. It's a personality assessment. It's a 360 assessment that you can do by having. It's a questionnaire that you take, and then a bunch of folks that you identify take along with you. It's the same questions that you ask yourself, but then they respond to them as far as the way that they interact with you and how they see you. And then it's displayed in this really cool circle, hence the term leadership circle. And it's 27 different dimensions, right? On the top, you have these creative dimensions of leadership. And on the bottom, you have these reactive tendencies for leadership. And the more you're in the creative world, the less you're in the reactive world, and vice versa. So if you're spending all your time in the reactive world, that's where allowing everything on the outside to influence you and to have you just be responding to everything all the time. You're always putting out fires, for example. You're always rushing from place to place because you got to get that done. You got to get that done. You're responding to stuff, right? You're not able to be that creative leader where you're being proactive and say, okay, you know what? I want to create this wonderful thing, this vision that I have for something, for my company, for my team, for my organization, for my business. You're not able to live into that creativity because you're always spending your energy and time reacting to the world. And that's how a lot of folks look at what happens in the world nowadays with like diversity, equity, inclusion stuff, right? DEI work is largely reactive nowadays. And as a result, it's very hit or miss. If you're just reacting to something, if you're only doing it because you think someone's going to be upset if you don't do it, or you think you should do it. So, we're just going to invest money so we can say we did it. That money's better spent somewhere else. Don't even bother, because it's not going to be effective. It's not going to stick, right? It's not really what you want to do. It's not really where that energy is going to be best invested. Now, if you're reacting to the market, if you're reacting to different things, and that's all you ever do is react, you're always going to be one step behind, right? Take it into a business point of view, right? Out of the personal for a second into the business world, you're always going to be that one step behind, because the people who are really the innovators in the market are the ones who can actually not just anticipate the market, but actually create the market, right? They are the ones who drive the market forward. And the innovators are really the ones who have the power of the market, because they're able to be creative fully. They're not the ones reacting to the market. They're not saying, for example, Google, right? They didn't respond to the market. They didn't say that, oh, there's a need for a search, so we'll just make a search engine. And then they're like, oh, there's a need for a good email service, so we'll make a good email service. They're these things. They create these bundles based on anticipation, and then created the need for these things after the fact. We need an open source or an open version of Microsoft Outlook, for example. So let's make the G Suite, which eventually came up itself over time. Now Google has a whole data practices and stuff like that. Whether you care about that is a different story. But the point is, they're driving the market forward. They push things. The world's a very different place because Google's been in it, right? Amazon, same idea, right? Apple for a long time was extremely innovative. The debate is there whether it still actually are or not. And but ultimately, the iPhone did change the game, right? That was not something that people ever thought. No one ever said, I would love a touchscreen device. I'd love that to be the case. I'd love this like really cool thing with apps and whatnot, and an iPod built into it. No one said that. Apple wasn't responding to a need in the market. If they were just responding, they never would have created that, right? Henry Ford, for example, the whole idea of the car, creating the car, that wasn't respond to a need in the market. Because the market, if and here's a great quote, which I love. It's like, if you ask people what they wanted, they would have said they wanted faster horses. No one ever said they wanted a car, but cars were created, right? So these are examples of people who are creative. They weren't reactive to the market, and that's why things have changed. That's why they've been innovators in such a way that they changed the entire game for not just for their time, but for centuries after, for decades after, right? And now a century after. So think about that for your industry, for yourself, right? Whether for your business or for your individual your own development. What are some areas where you want to be more creative, right? Where you don't want to, you're tired of responding to things. You're tired of putting out fires all the time, or just being reactive to the market or to the world, right? What can you do for yourself to be more creative? How can you live into those values a little more and actually find those things that light you up and are able to let you feel your passions? Because a lot of times that we ignore our passions because, one, we don't even notice them because we're so caught up being reactive. We don't even notice the creative stuff that's happening, right? And two, we get into this routine and it becomes familiar, right? So it just becomes the way things are done. Like, things have always been done this way because that's just the way that they're done. And so we'll accept that as a status quo. So we make it okay to just be reactive as opposed to encouraging innovation and encouraging people to think for themselves and think outside the box, right? There never should be a box to begin with, right? If we take that box out of the picture, then there's nothing in the box. And there is no box. We're just talking about purely creative ideas. But we get so comfortable with this box, right? We want people to be in these neat, simple boxes because it's easier to define. It's easier to put people in these situations. And so that limits ourselves. That limits us. It limits people we work with or talk to. We put these labels and just, it takes away the creativity from things. But in reality, who really is just one thing or one label? I know I'm not. I don't want to be, right? And I don't think anyone listening to this right now, you out there watching this right now, I don't think any of you are any one particular thing. We're all an intersection of many different things. And so finding those things, those parts of you that intersect, that are the most fun or the most passionate or the most energizing for you, that's the creative part of things. And how do you put those things together to potentially make a business, make a life, whatever you want to do? Or some people like separating it. Some people don't want to necessarily enjoy their work. They don't think that their work should be enjoyed, and they have their hobbies for that. That's totally fine too. Everyone has their own path, their own way of doing things. But some people don't even have those hobbies. They don't even know what they would enjoy doing because they've spent their whole lives being reactive. We create a society, a culture of reactivity to the point where everything's reactive. We only see things on the news. There's only a call to action to get things changed if there's a reason to change it, right? Like, we know these things happen, but until something big happens, then there's a big call to action. Oh, we have to respond to this. Oh, we have to respond to the George Floyd, or we have to respond to Breonna Taylor, or we have to respond to all these Asian hate crimes, right? This was around for the last 20, 30, 50, 70, 100 years. Why have you never done anything about that before? Right? It's not because it's not something that's never been a call to action. We're being reactive. We're not being proactive because things are good enough to get along, and good enough doesn't get anything anywhere. Good enough doesn't push the market forward, right? Good enough doesn't push ourselves forward to grow and to develop and to be the better version of ourselves, whether individually or as a society. So ask yourself that question. What are some areas where you can personally invest your energy and be more creative, right? And let go of the fear. Notice how the fear is holding you back, right? Even as I'm talking about this, what's coming up for you? What are the feelings you're having right now? Maybe one, probably I'm full of shit. That's fine, entirely reasonable. That's totally fine. I could be. What else though? What about you, right? That could also just be you projecting on me, right? What are you feeling about yourself, about what you've done in your life or what you haven't done? Right? What's some risks you've been afraid to take? Right? What are some things that you've been afraid to do because you're afraid of failing, because you're afraid of what people think of you? You're afraid of what people's reactions to your success will be. You're afraid you're not good enough or not worthy enough to make that choice. Or you're just afraid of stepping out of what people expect you to do, the box that you've always been in, right? Think about that for yourself and really jump into that and take some time to do that. I mean, it's worth it. And for those of you who have been through midlife crises, who are still in them, some folks, or who are going through at quarter life crises, as people call them sometimes, people who are dealing with imposter syndrome, right? That's a lot of fear. It's just fear driving you. It's fear that's gnawing at us from the inside. And it's holding us back from being creative and being the best versions of ourselves. Ask yourselves how fear is holding you back, right? How is it? What could you do if you didn't have to deal with your fear? What possibilities would you be able to create for yourself, for people you care about, if fear wasn't holding you back? I imagine that'd be a pretty long list and a pretty powerful list. Think about that for yourself. And yeah, that's today's topic. I wanted to discuss it. It was pretty quick one today, but I thought it was worth talking about. And thanks, Andrea. Thanks for joining in. An average person can be great by being willing to do what the average person won't do. Love it. That's a great quote. That's amazing. And that's absolutely true. What makes an average person not average is what they're willing to do, right? So I love that. That's really powerful. And for those of you who are curious about that, take a thought about that. Think about those kind of quotes. Those are going to be really powerful if you think about them. What makes you average and what makes you, there's a question that I love too, which is, what's your superpower, right? What is your superpower as a person, as an individual, as a business owner in general? What is your superpower? For me, I think my superpower would probably be helping people to see things differently, change perspectives, reframing. What's yours? So think about that as we go forward into the rest of the week. You got a whole week, right? See how you respond to the world. Observe this week and notice the areas where fear is holding you back, even in small areas. And I'm not saying you got to make some massive change, massive shift, right? Things aren't done by massive changes. We love to see those massive aha moments or those like really big shifts, but truthfully, they don't happen that often. It's small stuff. Incrementally, you change and you grow. I saw a quote by Matthew McConaughey. He did an acceptance speech, and he was saying that, when he was 15, someone asked him, who's your hero? Who do you want to be? He said, let me think about that. And he came out to the guy in a couple of weeks and he said, my hero is myself in 10 years. And so 10 years later, the guy came back. He said, okay, are you your hero yet? He's like, no, my hero is myself in 10 years again. And then that's always been true since then. He's never actually achieved that because he's always pushing the needle forward. That's innovation. That's creativity, right? That's understanding that you're never going to achieve that. It's not about achieving it. It's about the journey to get there. You're always trying to be better and better and better, and to always take yourself to the next level. You can't do that if you're just reacting. Ever. You're going to get caught in that loop of reacting constantly. And you don't want to just be a reactive person, right? Raw reactions are always going to hold us back in the long term. There's a reason people say pause, process, and then react. Right? That's one thing that they teach us as coaches, right? Trained coaches know how to do that, know how to take a step back and say, let's see what's going on. I've heard the question for years. Are you scared to succeed? Why am I not understanding the question? Is it because that if you succeed, you have to live up to the success and you're scared of it? Good question, James. I don't know that it's necessarily living. I mean, it depends on the person, honestly. I think, and if you're not understanding the question, maybe it doesn't apply to you that way, right? I would just ask the question, how is fear holding you back, right? And what are you afraid of? And some people are scared to succeed because they're scared maybe they're scared of living up to that success after the fact, of being able to reproduce it. Maybe they're scared that they can't do it on their own. Maybe they're scared of being so successful and then everything changing for them, not being familiar, right? Not knowing how to deal with that success or knowing how they can relate to that. It really depends on the person. But the folks that I've dealt with who are scared of success are the ones who just have never taken the time to actually be successful, visualize success, what it looks like to be successful, right? They're worried about having to take it to the next level because every time they succeed, they always push themselves to the next level. And it's not the path that they want to be on. They're succeeding for someone else, not for themselves, right? They're succeeding because it's a path that they feel that they should be on. So again, it's operating out of fear. It's operating out of, I'm obligated to do this. And if I do this, then, I got to do the next thing too. That means I got to do the next thing too. If you're on the path that really lights you up, if you're on a path of energetic and creativity, then something that's energetic and creative for you, like that lights you up, that energizes you, then that's not going to be an issue as much. So a good question though, really great question. I appreciate it. So if anyone else doesn't have any questions, feel free to please post in the chat if you have questions. But if not, I will close with this idea, which is, again, going back to that question: what are you afraid of right now? What are you afraid of in your business, in your life, in your personal situations, in the world we live in right now? And as you are living this world right now, what are you afraid of? And I don't mean of stuff like COVID or like afraid of bats or afraid of spiders or heights and whatever, but what are you afraid of that's holding you back from what you want? And maybe the next question would be, what do you want? Because I can almost guarantee you whatever it is you want is on the other side of fear, right? And that's a quote that I forgot who said it originally now. Will Smith said it on Oprah a couple years ago, but it's a powerful one. Whatever you want is probably on the other side of that fear. So if you push through that fear, that's the light on the other side of the tunnel. But if you're just running from it, you're probably running from what you want too. So that's all I got for today, guys. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Hope you have a wonderful week and enjoy yourselves. We'll talk to you guys on Thursday with Naheed and myself and with Chat with Coaches again. And yeah, if you guys like the video, hit the subscribe button, hit like. Please reshare this if someone is out there you want to share it with and who might benefit from seeing it. And yeah, take care, guys. Stay safe. Have a great week.